Hello and welcome to part 2 of the DRZ400 build. This video is going to go over general disassembly, tools you'll need, and some tips that might help you. First, starting with the tools, it's nothing crazy. I have a general Husky socket set just for whatever I need to pull the bike down, some wrenches in case I need them, and Allen keys. I also have a cheap Harbor Freight drill with an adapter on it. Nothing fancy or expensive, just something easy to take the bolts out. Taking stuff apart, I'll use power drills, but using or putting stuff back together, I like to do everything by hand just to make sure the threads are aligned and nothing gets tripped out. The only interesting thing here is sandwich bags and a Sharpie. That's just to label bolts wherever they come from, bag them up individually or with whatever set they have. You can also put stuff back where it came from, but sometimes it's easier to bag. Where I'll be starting with first is just taking the plastics off the bike. This will kind of expose everything, let me know what I'm working with, and also allow me to get to more complicated parts and get those off later to be inspected, sold, whatever I decide to do with them. When taking front fenders off, it's always important to keep an eye on the hardware. There are these little spacers on a lot of different bikes. These just kind of make sure that the clamping force is put onto the spacers here instead of the plastic, and also lets it get tighter so you don't have to deal with bolts backing out because the plastic's holding the tension instead of a metal on metal contact. And again, just using that little tip, bag everything up, label where it came from. You can also just put it back in the holes that it came out of. But in the sense of I'll be taking the whole triple tree off to do stuff with that, I don't want to have anything hanging down or in the way when I go to work on that. Next up, the headlight shroud will be coming off. This specific part utilizes only, if it will focus for me, screws. These are going to be JIS, which is Japanese Industrial Standard. They are a specific head shape of a Phillips screwdriver. One like this won't work perfect, but it will. It just doesn't seat in all the way. You want to be careful when using these because you can easily strip out a JIS screw. Due to these being screws and not bolts, I'll be replacing them with bolts when I go to reassemble everything due to them being much harder to strip out, and I just don't like dealing with these, especially if they get mangled up. So with the rad shrouds removed on either side, I'll be moving to the seat next to get that off. That'll allow me to have access to get the rear fender off as well as the side panels. With DRZs, I don't know if it's specific for the model. I know the fasteners for this are very hard to find. The airbox use a type of, I guess, aircraft fastener where they are half twist to pop. There is 3 of them on the airbox. That's what you do to remove it. This gives you easy access to the air filter on the side there. Those fasteners you can only get from the EU if you need replacements. If not, Suzuki only sells this panel as a full panel with the fasteners already included, since they are kind of locked in place with fasteners on the back so they don't fall out no matter what you do. This bike was lucky enough to still have the OEM tool pouch in here, which is in perfect condition and still contains all of the items. The one sad part is peeling up the foam that is inserted in here to get the tool pouch out. It is an OEM item, and I do not like tearing apart OEM stuff that I plan on keeping. There it is. This will be reinstalled to keep that kind of OEM plus look in. The rear fender bolts in specific also require you to use a 10mm instead of an 8, compared to every other fastener that I've taken off so far on this bike, besides the screws which were on the headlight shroud. That's how that comes off. Due to the tight location in here, I will be switching to a ratchet instead of a power drill. I've already pulled these out, but another thing you will encounter when you're going to remove the rear fender is taking off the connectors for the tail light, as they run through a hole that is cut in the back of the rear fender. So at this stage in the video, that's all the plastics removed. The gas tank will be removed separately since it still has fuel in it, and I don't feel like dealing with that right now, especially with me leaving for the holidays real soon. This now lets me know what I'm working with underneath the plastics, which is just as clean as I thought it would be, since this bike is such low miles, only at 550 at the time of it being dismantled right now. I'll continue taking a couple items off, such as the headlight, and moving to the tail light, and possibly starting to work on getting the bars dismantled so I can get that triple and those forks off sooner than later to polish the lower triple, as well as start getting it ready for the fork swap in the corner over there. Starting with the headlight, as it's pretty simple, it just has 4 10mm bolts, 2 on each side, that need to be taken out, as the drill snaps my wrist, which is wonderful. From there, the stock headlight simply just pulls out. You have to be mindful of the blinker relay that's located right here, as well as the plug in the back for the headlight bulb itself. These usually just wiggle off. And then this one specifically, it is locked into a tab right there. So the only real way to get it off is by slowly pulling and twisting at it until it decides to pop off on its own. It's a very tight, finicky thing. The sad part is I'll be going with a J&S Designs headlight, which they kindly gave me at a discount since I was running them before. Their headlights are very nice. They come with an OEM style bracket. It does not, however, have a piece to relocate the stock blinker relay. So that's one thing that will be missing out. This will be tied up with this pack up here. With the tail light, it's fastened by 2 Allens that are under here, hidden away. Due to their location and the difficulty recording, I'm going to take it off but not really show much of the process besides from up top. These fasteners specifically for this spot are going to be one of the few that I put back in their original location, just due to the fact that I won't be messing with anything back here. If anything, the swing arm is going to be flipped up, which will have no effect on these. And they'll also be left in their place, so I don't have to worry about finding them, just in case any hardware gets lost throughout the process. Due to how tight these fasteners are, I will be using the JIS screwdriver that comes standard in the DRZ toolkits. This will allow me to hopefully not strip these out, since they are really stuck into where they are and they do not want to budge. So with these 2 screws being an absolute pain, I'm going to use an impact driver because I do not have an electric impact that will get these out without stripping them, so I don't have to deal with that issue on this bike. This is an impact driver kit. It's about 20 bucks from Harbor Freight. They're pretty cheap. If you have an impact gun, it's similar, but this one's more precise in my feeling. You're not kind of just squeezing the trigger and hoping. You're kind of applying more force and actually trying with it. It has different options for bit sizes that you can go with. You find whichever one fits the best in your situation. You put it up to it, you twist in the loosening direction or whichever direction you want to go, since it'll change that. And you just hit the back of it with a hammer, and that shock will give it kind of an impact and try to twist those free. Just like that, it loosens the screw that was priorly stuck. They have a very interested rounded shape to the tip of them. If the camera will focus on that. I do not know why it's like that. Very interesting. I will not be reusing those. I'll use short stubby bolts instead. I don't trust these, and having screws here in such a high traffic area for dirt, grime, and things like that, it's just not worth it. Due to still needing to drain the fluids, I'm going to pull the exhaust before I pull the wheels, as I'll handle that another day. The exhaust here will have 2 bolts for the heat shield, which really you only need to take 1 out, and there is a clamp behind that to take out. There's the 1 upper mount, and then the 2 bolts that are on the head. Just a note on the swing arm, if it wasn't for this deep groove here, I would have reused it. This was from the dual Yoshis rubbing when the dealership installed them. They didn't space it out enough. These are at least 2 to 3 millimeters deep in the grooves. This deep one right here. The other ones just wore off the anodizing, but to me that's unacceptable for a build that I'm gonna have super clean, which is why there's a new swing arm sitting right there. With the front exhaust mount, there are 2 Allens. So there's 1 bolt and then the other one's a nut. They're hidden in there pretty tightly. You have to be careful with them to not strip them. And it's also really hard to make turns with the radiator being right here so close. So with all the hardware removed, I'll be first taking off the can portion and the mid pipe, and then the whole header portion comes off by itself. I have to get this part off first before I can mess with that. So I did go and take the exhaust off camera, just because of the amount of fuss it was giving me. It was hard to kind of get everything in the shot and also not have it look really jank because it was a pain. I did take off the clamp for the mid pipe to header portion. This is also the bolt for the rear can mount that goes right in here. It's a specialty Allen. It's got a nice big flange on it. It's a specific part. I don't know if a lot of the exhaust kits use this, reuse it, or give you a specialty one. I know the FMF I had on my old bike was just a bolt, so it didn't have this nice flange on it to protect the nice rubber bushing that's in there. So that'll conclude part 2 of the Drz400sm build. Just took off pretty much the plastics, some guards, lighting materials, and the full exhaust system. The next portion of the video will have me draining the oil, draining the coolant, getting the gas tank off, bars, taking off the forks, the triple tree, wheels, swing arm, and getting it prepped to be reassembled. Remember, when you're done working on stuff for the day, make sure to pack up your tools, clean off everything if you're dealing with dirty parts or components, put everything up, and then in my case, because the plastics are such a nice thing, and I will be selling some of them, they're just kind of hanging out on some of the furniture in the meantime while the bike gets worked on. Have a good one. Hope you enjoyed, and thanks for watching.